My name is Chauhan. I am a lawyer in Ontario, England, and also India. I'm also a deputy judge. And the video today that we will do with Mandy Jazzy, who is a student and articling with me, but she'll be a lawyer next year. This is the year 2014, so 2015, Mandy will be a lawyer. But this video is addressed to not just the people involved in litigation, but also to lawyers and paralegals, based on my experience in many files as a lawyer as well as a judge. So I would like to address an issue to the lawyers in particular and paralegals as to how do we deal with the question of conflict and a question of resolution of legal issues when we have that before us in our capacity as lawyers and when you're dealing with it in litigation as well. So to deal with the issue, I have Mandy here, and she will address the questions and attempt to answer the questions from the point of view of how to deal with legal problem solving.
Yes. Okay, so is the skill used for problem solving different than that of a legal skill?
Yes, I want to emphasize, Mandy, that the problem solving skill, in my observation over many years, both as a lawyer and a judge, is very much different than the skill of law itself. So we get trained in the common law system, Ontario, England. We get trained in the system of how to deal with the procedure in substantive law. And then we use these skills to try to deal with it from the adversarial point of view until we reach the trial or a settlement. But I think from my observation, it is very important to recognize that there are so many variables of recognizing the people involved, their personalities, the characters, the legal issues, and even the fact issue, that the whole maze has to be put together in your mind for the purpose of looking for a solution. And that problem-solving skill is almost like solving a jigsaw puzzle in a given situation, using your legal skills separately to put it together to find a resolution of the problem. So I do think they are two different things.
Okay. And so how else are these skills different?
Well, they're different to the extent that if you simply look at the solution of the problem from the legal point of view, then you will have a legal answer from the system in which you follow the procedures to get to a particular point. Let's say you start a statement of claim, you have a statement of defense, you might then look at the evidence and then reach a conclusion, you keep arguing. You can sometimes, even within the law itself, there are so many areas of law. Let me give you one example that I went through where two shareholders were disputing with each other, and the opposing party went to another litigation lawyer in a situation where the shareholders could not agree. So the litigation was commenced to say that you were wrong as a shareholder and you should indemnify me because I didn't get paid in terms of my amount of share in the business. Now the lawyer is specialized in litigation and thinks only in terms of what he can do in the court system and just wants to go right ahead, costing the money, a large amount of money with each step at $300-400 an hour. What I saw that in resolving the issue, the fight was so bitter that the parties in fact basically couldn't succeed in doing the business. So from my point of view, I used my understanding of the corporate law in the leasing arrangement, and the lease was terminated and put somebody else's name, and the whole problem got solved outside of the litigation process itself. So the first thing that I saw within the area of law itself, that you can solve the problems if you think about other areas of law and how you can utilize your knowledge in other areas of law to solve the same problem that is commenced in one particular format, say litigation format. And sometimes you can think of totally unique solutions, for example, mediation. If you want to mediate a situation, parties agree, then you have a situation where all parties are able to take it outside the arena of litigation in a confrontation situation and find a resolution which is agreeable with consensus, and parties can maintain the relationship in a business situation, for example, But in a family situation, for example, that they find a solution and carry on with their lives with a resolution that they both agree to the mediator. So there are, in my view, different ways of thinking in a situation other than a fixed category of procedure in the law itself.
Hmm. So how do you deal with problem solving in the law?
Well, let me take a typical example. What would you do when you have a legal problem and how do you go about it? And I think the best example we can take is litigation itself, which is the commencement of an action by one person, and then the other party defends the action, and then if you, in the situation of a lawyer, what would he look at? I think the typical situation that I observe is the parties are looking at firstly the procedure, statement of claim, statement of defense, affidavit of documents, examination for discovery, pre-trial hearing, trial. Then mechanically going through the steps, one step at a time, telling the client is the next step, costing them money, rather than thinking out what your strategy would be like. In my opinion, a lawyer who is bent upon a solution and a strategy is far better in terms of finding a resolution than a situation where he simply follows the procedure.
Mm-hmm.
So what he can do is to assess the whole situation from a broader perspective. What are the characters in the game, so to speak? There's a lawyer and his client. There is the opposing lawyer and his client. What are the expectations from the cause of action point of view?
Mm-hmm.
So once you identify the cause of action, the defense that the other party has provided,
Right.
then the legal game begins with the character in issue. How much money each party is willing to spend? Are you going to bring in a motion to make it more difficult? Are you going to try to say simply, no, I'll accommodate the other party in terms of the motion situation, changing the pleadings?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I now going to play the game to the limit and say, I will put a difficult scenario for the opposing party because I simply want to oppose it?
Okay.
So once you understood the cause of action, the defense, and the possible strategy, approach for the resolution of the problem, you harp upon the theme with the opposing counsel. And when you do that thing, through the procedures when you have a chance to interact, then you'll find that at some point in time, you will be able to get your point across to them.
Well, that was a really helpful summary on the cause of action procedure and characters as well as the strategy. What are some adversarial issues involved in family law?
Well, I think the issue that we mentioned earlier today with respect to typical litigation in a commercial area is somewhat similar in the adversarial system in which we solve family law issues, but they're slightly different in my view, because the family as an institution is more emotional rather than just financial, and therefore the way you handle the decisions in a family law issue have to be dealt with more sensitively. My own view is that the adversarial approach to solution of family law issues is not ideal, because you're trying to ask one person to find fault and wrongdoing by the other party. I want a divorce because you did something wrong. I want support because you're not supporting the child. Things like that. So when you frame the question in the legal system to try to look for the answer from the adversarial point of view, you are causing hostility which is already there. So when the family is broken down, there's enormous amount of hostility and disagreement between the parties. And you foster that by framing the question from the adversarial point of view. So my feeling is that your skill to negotiate and understand the parties' emotions and the characters in the play, which is the lawyers and the respective clients. As a lawyer, you can say to a client, no, I want to wish to, what would you like me to do? Well, I want to really punish my husband, I want to get him to pay more money. Or I want the wife to say, well, she left me and therefore I'm not going to support the children. So those kinds of questions, when brought in the legal system through the family law arena, where there's a controversy, hostility, and adversarial system, are more difficult to solve in that format, because the attitude to compromise is more difficult to find, because there is already some hostility between the parties. And so what is better in my view in terms of the solution? Each lawyer has to be sensitive, more agreeable, more mediation minded, recognizing in the problem solving arena, what would you practically do in a solution point of view? If you want to go to Florida, then let's figure out what will happen to the children. And that frame of mind of trying to find a resolution in a broken family and then putting the pieces together for the family and the lawyers to then figure out is feasible is a better solution. And there the problem solving is more in terms of identifying issues which are more emotional in nature and understanding the institution of family as well, and then respecting it and trying to find a resolution within the framework of how do you cause the least amount of damage financially and emotionally. And therefore, in my view, there are more variables to think about when you deal with family law issues. But otherwise, as I mentioned earlier, that the skill to solve a problem goes beyond the legal skills alone. And that includes your attitude actually. Then are you going to solve the problem, or are you going as a lawyer to first look for your fees? So that attitude in problem solving is very, very important. My own view is that in doing so, we have a duty as lawyers to look after the client's interest first, more sensitively in the family law area. That's how we should deal with it. So I hope that was interesting.
Very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions. And if you like this series of interviews, you can watch them on YouTube under my name, J. Chauhan, or my website is www.jchauhan.ca under resources and videos. Thank you.